The weirdo at McDonald's, also known as the day I lost some of my innocence. When I was growing up, my dad and I lived with my grandparents. My parents had me while they were teenagers, and my dad got full custody because he lived with my grandparents, and my mom was just living with random friends, going from house to house every few weeks. I was the daughter my grandparents never had, and they doted on me. When I was 6, my grandpa passed away from cancer. This story takes place about 5 months after he passed away. This was, I believe, a Saturday, and my dad was at work. My gram decided to take me to McDonald's for lunch, and, like any 6-year-old, I was really excited. So we go to the McDonald's that was about 1.5 miles from our house, order our lunch, and sit down at a table to eat. At the time we were the only ones eating inside. About 10 minutes after we sit down, a scraggly-looking man walks in, orders a meal, and sits down at the table diagonally in front of us to the left. The area we lived in was middle and upper middle class, so this guy looked pretty out of place. Gram had her back to him, but I could see him perfectly. This man was at least in his mid-50s, with really wiry/scraggy and dirty white hair and beard. He had on blue shorts and a white t-shirt, also kinda dirty, and sandals. It's amazing, this happened 21 years ago and I can remember it like it was yesterday. So, I noticed that, under the table, this man had something dark pink and wrinkly on his lap, and he kept glancing at me and rubbing it every few seconds. In kindergarten, we learned about stranger danger and good touch, bad touch, and learned which parts of our body people weren't supposed to touch. It clicked, in my 6-year-old head, that this man was not supposed to have that out like that, nor doing what he was doing. I got really queasy and nervous. I didn't want to tell my gram right then and there because I thought the man would hurt us. If my dad had been there, I would have said something because my dad was my hero and could take on anybody. Instead, I put my Happy Meal box in front of my face so my view of this guy would be blocked. I had about half of my food left but had lost my appetite. Gram asked me if I was full and I just nodded yes. I was, and still am, very petite, so not finishing a full meal was nothing new for me. She asked me if I wanted to go play in the play area before we left, but I just shook my head and quietly said I want to go home. Gram cleared our table and we left. When we got home, I was still really nervous and I felt like I was going to throw up. Gram asked me what's the matter, Munchkin? Her pet name for me, and I started crying and told her about the man at the McDonald's and what I saw. My gram didn't panic or freak or get hysterical, she just hugged me and said it's all right, go on to your room and play and I'll take care of it. She wiped my tears, gave me a blueberry Kool-Aid burst, and told our dog, Patches, to go to my room with me, which she did. After I was out of earshot, Gram called the McDonald's and told them about the guy. He was still there. The manager told Gram he'd take care of it and call her back. An hour later, the manager calls back and tells Gram they called the police, who showed up in record time, and arrested the guy. When the police told the man to stand up, his frank and beans were still hanging out of his shorts. The manager also told Gram that she could bring me back for a month's worth of coupons for free Happy Meals. I have another story about a weirdo that happened a few years later, and this time my dad was there, and believe me, what my dad did to him was not pretty. But that's a story for another time. Edit, changed the name of the drink my gram gave me, as I was mistaken about the name. Edit 2, 99% of the time, I use Reddit using the Alien Blue iPhone app, and because of this, I didn't realize someone had gifted me Reddit Gold. I am so sorry I didn't thank whoever gifted me sooner. So, if you happen to come back to my post again, thank you for the gold. What if I had drunk it? This happened a few months ago, in the McDonald's at Copenhagen station. I am not Danish, only visiting the country for one day, and since I wanted to travel cheap I decided to take the cheapest bus there, which just so happened to be the one arriving at 11 p.m. the day before. I thought I could save even more money by not renting a bed somewhere and instead spending the night awake, or half asleep, at the station, do my business the next day, and sleep long and well on the bus back home. So this McDonald's is open 24/7. I pretty early discovered that the station was too cold for me to get some shut-eye, so I went inside and bought a coffee and sat down at an empty table. Plenty of lighting and semi-drunk people to keep me awake, I thought. I should add I'm 23 and female. After some while of sitting in my spot, a strange guy walked over and placed a full cup of soda on my table. He said in Danish something I believe meant I ate my food already, I didn't drink any, you should have it instead. I am Swedish, and although some Swedes understand Danish perfectly well, I have some difficulties doing so, so this is just a guess. Anyway, I didn't really pay much attention to the cup after it was put on my table. Just wrote it off as a random drunk trying to flirt. But I noticed that in front of me a table away sat another guy, and he was watching me closely, because we did lock eyes the times I looked up to peek at him. This creeped me out. I really didn't like being watched like this, and he just sat there for nearly an hour, even though he had no food in front of him. In the end this dude stood up and walked over to me, and I cursed internally, thinking I'd have to defend myself and tell him to leave. But he turned, and there stood the guy that had left the soda cup on my table. He told the soda guy to leave, after pushing the soda cup back into his arms, and that he didn't want to see him anywhere near this place again. Then he turned to me and explained, in English, that soda guy had walked by my table several times glancing at me and the cup and probably waiting for me to drink it. He said he'd finished his meal a while ago and just stayed to watch over me but had to leave and reminded me to be careful. I hadn't even noticed soda guy supposedly pacing by, I was too fixated on this other dude, who just happened to be the good guy watching over me. Who knows what was in that soda? And what would have happened should I had gotten really thirsty and drank some of it? So thank you, McDonald's guy who watched over me. And let's not meet, soda guy. TLDR, thought I was being stared at by a creeper at McDonald's. Turns out he was watching out for me and making sure I didn't drink a soda that could have possibly been spiked. Creeper at McDonald's. So at the time I was a 16-year-old female working in McDonald's. Now at the McDonald's I worked at, when you are on headset, where you answer people at the drive-thru, you are normally required to be at the first window to also take payment. My job position was customer care manager at the time, so my job was meant to be on front desk, but 99% of the time they required me behind the tills. So I was having a normal day, working a long shift but having a normal working day. I happened to be on headset and first window that day. Anyway, my headset buzzes letting me know there is someone at my drive-thru lane. I go through to the first window to answer my customer, and this is how the conversation ensued. Me, hello, welcome to McDonald's, what can I get you? Him, oh wow, you've got a beautiful voice. His voice was very grunty and husky sounding. Not off-putting, we have all sorts of customers come through McDonald's every day, so nothing gave me the creeps at this point, but his voice was very recognizable. Thank you sir, how very flattering, what can I get you? I haven't decided yet, long pause, can I just come round to the first window to decide? I want to see who I'm talking to. Now we weren't very busy, and at this point Creeper hadn't actually creeped me out, I mean all he had done was pay me a compliment, and we quite often had people complain that they liked the face-to-face contact. So it was definitely not unusual to get a request like this. Yes sir, that's fine. Wow, you are just as beautiful as you sound. Thank you sir, have you decided what you are having? Are you an option? I laughed this off. It was my first job and I wasn't the rude kind of person when someone was paying a compliment. I must also point out this man must have been in his 60s, I remember he had one lazy eye that looked to the left, painfully awful teeth and patchy dark brown hair. At this point I was a little bit uncomfortable but was still more than willing to take his order. I'll have a cheeseburger. Okay sir, that's 99p, are you paying cash or card? Without answering my question, he started asking where I'm from and how old I was, etc., etc., etc. But it wasn't until his last few questions that I got super weirded out. H. What time do you finish work? M. 7:30. Why? I didn't finish at 7:30, but 7:30 was the first number to come into my head when I blurted it out. I finished at 8 and would probably do some overtime too, but I wasn't about to let him know that. H. I can meet you if you want. I can pick you up outside and we can go somewhere. All the while he is saying this, he has this horrendous grin on his face and keeps winking at me. M. I'm really sorry sir, but I am not allowed to meet customers outside of work as it's against our employee policy. This was utter bull's tea, but I needed him to leave me alone. He carries on being insistent but not getting the picture. I cut the conversation short. M. Anyway sir, sorry to be rude, but can I have the 99p for your cheeseburger? H. Yes, sorry, see you at 7:30. Off he drove to the next window. I was gobsmacked. I'd already said I wasn't going to see him. I was a little bit shocked but was not going to go over there and give him the satisfaction of talking to me again. My coworker came to me and said, "Ew, that guy had a major crush on you and wanted your number, but I didn't give it to him. He's old enough to be your dad." Anyway, I explained exactly what had happened and how uncomfortable it made me. 7:30 came and my county worker is spooked. Creeper is waiting in the car park for me, just like he said he would. He is sat halfway down the car park and you can see him just staring in. Our car park wasn't very big, it only had 4 rows of parking spaces, so he wasn't that far away and would have clocked me the minute I walked out the door. At this point I'm freaking out and head to the back of the store where hopefully he can't see me. I had to stay at the back of the store for 40 minutes before we knew it was safe to come out. Fast forward a week and Creeper is back on drive-thru. And guess who is back on headset and at window 1? Me. I heard his voice and recognized it straight away. H. I was hoping I'd hear your voice again. Why didn't you meet me the other day? M. Just 1 second sir, I'll be with you in a second. I immediately handed my headset to my manager and gave him a quick briefing of the situation. He gladly took the headset and dealt with the customer from start to finish. When my manager came back to let me know he had gone, he said that the creeper had been asking my name, my address, my surname. My manager said he was the most creepiest guy he had ever met and I was never to have anything to do with him again. If he came to work while I was there afterwards, my manager would have me head to the back room while he dealt with the creep. He still always asked about me. Every time. So Creeper at McDonald's, let's not meet again. Creeper at McDonald's number 2. You may have seen my first Creeper at McDonald's and I have said that I am going to update with more of my experiences there. If you haven't read my first one and would like to, the link is below. So my second encounter with a creep starts like this. Again, 16-year-old female working as a customer care manager on front of house for McDonald's. Now, where I am from, when you are front of house, you are required to wear a light strip top, a yellow neck scarf and a pencil skirt to just below the knee which has a small split up the back. I always buttoned my shirt right up to the top, so I always looked very modest, and I would never say a McDonald's uniform is attractive. Anyway, when I worked at McDonald's I always put my all into everything I did. So I knew tills, drive-through, drinks, serving, etc. I have also always been someone that will happily have a conversation with someone to make their experience enjoyable and hopefully make them want to come back. I was working on tills when Creeper number 2 came through the door. He was a tall, blonde, bodybuilder. At least 50 though. He came to the till and ordered, didn't look very happy, so I asked the obvious questions, how is your day, etc. He made small talk and we got chatting about both of our days. After that he tells me it's nice to see someone smile around here, everyone else is grumpy. Nice enough compliment, I was used to it. He was right, not many people here enjoyed this job. He starts coming in once a week, on a Wednesday morning. Each morning he would come in, we would have a chat. If I was on the floor, front of house, we would sit and chat at a table, and my managers were fine with this as they knew it made each customer's experience unique. We got to know each other's names. His name was Michael. I started college on a Wednesday and Thursday and worked at McDonald's part-time. So my shifts changed. I worked Mondays, Tuesdays and Saturdays instead of Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And sometimes extra days if they needed me. Michael started coming into McDonald's every day to find when I was working. First red flag, but I figured, he is just lonely and needs someone to talk to. Anyway, he worked out my shift pattern and came in on Tuesdays instead after asking me why I wasn't in on Wednesdays because he missed our chats. He'd do this thing where he would let someone else go in front of him if it meant that he could come to my till instead. He would wait to one side to get served by me. Odd, didn't think too much of it, just thought he was a man that liked to be served by someone with a smile and had taken a liking to me. Again, we chatted when he came in. This is where it got a bit more weird. We were sat down talking and he decided to really open up to me. He told me how him and his wife were going through a messy divorce. He started going into the details of why. He had punched his son. Now this guy was big. Like he looked like a bodybuilder. I can't remember exactly what had happened, but he had ended up smacking his wife too, I think. And here he was telling me about it? I'm no counselor after all. After proceeding to tell me how big his house was, probably to try and grip my attention, he started telling me how he was living in the basement of the house that he owned and it wasn't fair. I'm going to hit her agent if this carries on. Apparently the wife and son wanted him out and they were gonna have it and not pay him for it, blah blah blah. He wasn't letting that happen, his son won't talk to him, blah blah blah. He started asking me for advice, a 16-year-old girl. I didn't really know what to say, so I just sort of said everything happens for a reason, I suppose. And as I went to get up he asked me to sit back down. Now I had already been sat for near on half an hour and I know I said my managers don't mind, but that's pushing it a little bit. So I told him I really had to go. He carried on trying to get me to sit back down, but let me go in the end. Now this may seem totally unrelated, but trust me it will make sense later on. In McDonald's you have the sauce pumps, right? Well, they are connected to a big bag of sauce which has a popper in the top of it. You basically pop the tube into the popper on the bag. But Jesus Christ, this thing is fiddly. It can take me about 10 minutes just to get it connected, then to put the heavy bag in the holder on the side is another 5 minutes. It's a nightmare. Right back to the story, the sauce had ran out and I had to fiddle about getting it in. Where the sauce dispenser is right opposite from where Michael always sits. I could feel eyes burning into my back as I did this, and any time I'd turn round he would be looking at me and just smile. It made me feel a fair bit uncomfortable. But hey ho, it's my job and you deal with this stuff all the time. Trust me, he is not the first person I've had perving at my bum. He came back a few more times and each time I felt more and more uneasy. He started being a bit more personal. Telling me he thought I was a pretty young girl and we should meet up for coffee at some point, and I politely declined. Michael, then said this, can I ask you something personal? Me, depends what it is, I can't promise I will answer, haha. Are you a virgin? I'm not answering that. What size are your boobs? I have a boyfriend and I'm not comfy answering these questions. Do you love your boyfriend? Would you leave your boyfriend for me? Trying to scare him, my boyfriend is behind the counter and I don't think he will be very happy with you asking me questions like that. Just make sure he treats you right, you are a lovely girl. Anyway, I won't be coming back here for a while, so can I have your number? I don't think my boyfriend would be happy with that either. After that I go to the back room to calm myself as this was very unnerving for me. He was an older guy being very strange and asking super inappropriate questions of me. He knew my age as I had told him previously. The day continued. He had left, I continued and went home. When I woke up the next morning I had a message on WhatsApp, a message on Facebook and a friend request on there and a Instagram follow. It was Michael. I don't know how, but he had found all my personal accounts just through my first name. The only way I can think of him finding it out is by asking a colleague what my surname is and getting my number of one of them. Maybe he was friendly with one of the other workers and got my number from them. I don't know. He had messaged me saying how he needed to see more of my pictures. My Facebook and Insta are set to private, but he saw the main pictures for them and my WhatsApp photo. He had sent another message about how he loved looking at my ass when I was bent over crawling on the floor to fix the sauce bags. I don't know if my split in my skirt was revealing, but I don't think it was, saying all the things he would love to do to me. At that point I noped out and blocked him on everything. I still get messages, not sexual though, from other accounts he has made, wishing me a Merry Christmas etc. Even the guy, he should have gotten the gist of me not wanting to talk to him. Luckily for me, I moved away a week or so after that happened, so Michael, let's not meet again. Child taker at McDonald's. So, I work at a small McDonald's in an even smaller town in the south, and I've encountered many strange people and seen some fucked up things so far, and probably will write more encounters with them on here. But I saw something today that I thought I would never see and was shocked at how many people didn't notice, or didn't care about, what was taking place right next to them. I was working behind the counter at around 7 p.m. and we had lots of people in the lobby, a few children as well. I like kids, so I usually watch them play around in the lobby because they're really cute, but I got distracted by the large amount of customers we had to serve and ignored them for about 15 minutes. I looked back when I heard a man ask in a small voice, almost whispering, "So, how old are you?" I turn around to see this extremely tall guy with a shaved head and a red shirt talking to a little girl who looked about 5 or 6. He had a little boy around the same age on his shoulders who was giggling. They were beautiful children with blonde hair and blue eyes. I saw that they were happy and the guy seemed friendly, but something in my head was extremely worried. I had a huge suspicion upon seeing this that these kids were not his. What grown man would ask a little girl how old she is? And if he knew who they were, wouldn't he already know? Why would he care? But after this he said something that made my heart sink. "You should come with me now, I have a little brother who's 6'2", let's go play with him." He then began to walk to the exit with the boy on his shoulders and the girl tagging along, and I immediately shot for the door to stop him, just as a lady with blonde hair came out of the bathroom shouting, "Hey! Where are you guys going? Get over here." The tall guy froze with eyes as big as saucers, he was fucking petrified. The lady then scooped up the little girl in her arm and reaches for the boy as the tall guy lets him down, stammering, "Oh, I was just playing with your kids, they're really nice kids, I just really like kids," all at once with a nervous smile. The blonde lady then faked a smile back, but still had eyes that clearly said, "Stay the fuck away from my children, you fucking creep," but her mouth ended up saying, "Oh, well, I'm glad you had a nice time, but we need to order now," and led her kids to the back of the restaurant. The tall guy then hurried out of the front exit and the lady clutched her kids close to her the entire time she was there, even in their booth. If I ever see that guy at work again, I will immediately call the cops on him. Who knows what would have happened to those kids if I wasn't looking, or their mother hadn't come out of the bathroom at that very second. I think that it's awful that she left her kids unattended in a full restaurant lobby, but no one deserves to lose their children to a disgusting creep with a sick grin like that. Weird man at McDonald's at 5 a.m. So it's really late, but this just happened and no one I know is awake and I need to tell someone this story, so here it goes. I'm on mobile, so sorry for any formatting errors. It's finals week at my university, so I've been leaving the library at odd hours. Tonight I end up leaving at around 4:45 a.m. and I decided to get some food before heading back to my apartment. Since it's so late, I just settle on the McDonald's closest to my university. As I'm pulling up to the drive-thru, I notice an all-white dog barking and chasing a guy riding his bike in the parking lot. This McDonald's actually shares a huge parking lot with a grocery store and is near some apartments, so I don't think of this too much. It's important to note that I'm currently the only car in the drive-thru. I order my food and pull up to the second window and wait to pay. As I'm waiting, a man in a gray hoodie walks out from behind a silver car. Notice how I didn't say gets out of the car, and starts walking up to me. This car is maybe 40 to 50 feet away from me, so it takes him a good 15 seconds to get to me. The entire time I was praying he was just walking to the door to the restaurant that was also in the same direction, but nope. Now, it's pretty dark in the parking lot, so I couldn't get a good look at him, but I can make out that we was in his late 30s or early 40s, had some scraggly facial hair, some odd scars, possibly acne scars, all over his face, and had a light brown complexion. He gets to my passenger side window. I roll up my driver's side window and crack the window near him just enough so that we can have a conversation. He says, "Hey man. You think you can give me a jump? I have the cables ready and everything." I think it over for a few seconds, but I'm just getting a weird vibe from this man, so I respond that I'm not comfortable with doing that. He looks annoyed but walks off. At this point, the McDonald's worker walked up to the drive-thru window to take my money. She asks me what that guy wanted and I explain to her what he asked me. I get my change and now I'm waiting for my food and I see the gray hoodie guy aimlessly walking around the parking lot. A couple cars had got in line behind me after he had talked to me, but I noticed that he didn't ask any of them for a jump start. I get suspicious of this, so I decided to call the non-emergency police line after I get my food and drive away. Not wanting to look the number up while driving, and also not wanting to stay in that McDonald's parking lot, I pull into an empty H&R Block parking lot that's across the street and park there. While I'm looking the number up on my phone, I hear a dog bark. It sounds really close to me, so I look up from my phone in surprise. I see the same all-white dog from earlier. He's still chasing a guy on a bike, the same guy that had just asked me just jump start his car. He's circling my parked car. We make eye contact and he does that "what's up" head nod and I do the same reflexively. After that he bolts away with the dog still giving chase. I nope the fuck out of there. I still ended up giving an anonymous tip to the police, but hopefully that's the last I'll ever see of that man and his bike chasing dog. Creepy stalker McDonald's man. It was the midsummer, on a Sunday, when I planned to meet one of my girlfriends in San Bernardino. This happened to me a year ago. I was 15 at the time and dressed in a pretty provoking manner. I wore Cortez shoes, cocky dickies, big shirts, the usual Latino gang attire. No one really wanted to fuck with me, especially since I'm a pretty big guy, 200 pounds big, not fat, 5 feet 11 inches, and I have a mean look, bald head and a thin scar that reaches down the side of my face, from a fight I got into before. I also have a few amateur, self-inflicted tattoos down my forearms and hands that are pretty meaningless, but more creepy and ugly. I also know how to fight. I've been in boxing ever since I got out of the psychiatric hospital in Chino Hills. Back to the story, I took the bus to visit one of my girlfriends. I got to her house in the morning, about 11. She complained that she texted me, but I had no messages from her. I left her house about 6, and caught the last bus home. I thought I was home free, until the driver told me that the bus was out of service. The sun was beginning to go down, it was dark when the bus driver left. I pulled out my phone to call my mom. I had an unread message from my phone company, saying my phone service was being disconnected because of non-payment. Fucking great. This is probably why the girl's texts weren't going through. Now, I'm stuck in the middle of the most poverty-stricken counties, with no way to contact my parents or even get home. I was in front of a theater, by Regal San Bernardino 14 and RPX and behind the Carousel Mall. A few people loitering at the bus stop rushed me and asked if I was selling dope. Really wasn't surprised. I walked away and was spooked by a homeless lady throwing bottles and screaming at the top of her lungs, for no apparent reason. I ran a block away, looking for a payphone, a way to call my parents. I reached a McDonald's, where I was planning on calling my parents with their free Wi-Fi. My phone died when I got there. I paid for a drink and sat down. I was so helpless. I looked around to see if I can ask someone if I can use their phone to call my parents. There was a man sitting, a table over. He was alone. I approached him and asked him if I can use his phone. He said yes, as I frantically dialed my house phone. My mom answered and said she was on her way to pick me up. This man told me to sit with him, to calm down and eat a burger with him that he ordered. When I went to refill my cup, I glanced over and saw him putting something into the burger he placed on my side. I sat back down with him, and told him I wasn't hungry. He said all right, and placed it on the tray, not touching it again. He was an old man, he had glasses and was pretty fit for his age, and he was missing his pinky and his index finger, on his right hand, which made him eat fries, really abnormally. He ate really fast, as if someone was going to take his food away, swallowing it without even chewing. He was probably 50 years old, or a little more. He told me he was Siberian, working for a government project. He said he gets a lot of money and he has his white Mercedes-Benz outside. He offered me a ride home, where I declined and told him my mother was already coming. He gave me a creepy smirk, which rang chills down my spine and the hairs on my neck stand up. I was about to flip shit. I wanted to beat the shit out of him. I was furious. Why was he doing this to me? I thought this only happened in movies. I'm a big guy, no one should be messing with me. Look at my tattoos, look at my appearance, you shouldn't fuck with me. I heard my mom's voice as the front door opened and I felt calm. I got up and waved goodbye. My mom and I were at a red light when I noticed the white Mercedes-Benz roll up behind my mom's car. This isn't a usual car to see in this poverty-stricken area, so I was pretty sure it was the man. I thought he was going a different direction, but once my mom got on the freeway, I knew he was following us. Each lane we crossed, he did. The exit we got out of, he did. I didn't want to alarm my mom, so I asked her if she can stop at the store so I can buy us some chips. We pulled into the parking lot, as I saw the man drive off, noticing the shine of light off of his glasses. I wasn't being paranoid. When my mom drove me home, I didn't notice any car trailing us. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed the Mercedes pass by. How in the fuck? I was freaking out as I noticed the shine of light off of his glasses. Now he knew where I lived. I didn't tell my family anything. I was sure I was going to give my dad a heart attack. He wasn't in the best conditions, my mother was already stressing about it and my brothers were too young. I had a gun under my mattress, that I used to feel tough. But I knew I needed it now more than ever. I was the black sheep in the family, so I was usually left home alone. I heard my blue-nosed pit bull barking in the front lawn. I looked outside the window and noticed the man, passing by, trying to secretly take pictures of my house. I saw his car pass by my house a few minutes after. This happened the next day. It happened a few times and stopped. Though, when I was with my homeboys after school a month after, I noticed the Mercedes parked on the opposite side of the road, from where I usually exit school. It was after detention, so no one was around. I knew it was him because I can see the shine of light on his glasses. I told my friends, since it was about 8 of us, cholo-looking teenagers. My homies joked before when I told them about this guy, saying I'm crazy and that they'll beat his ass if they see him. My homeboys immediately ran over to the car, and my friend Doughboy pulls out a gun from his backpack. I was frozen with adrenaline and fear. I knew he was bluffing because the gun is never loaded, it's just for show. Or was it? I debate that, to this day. Keep in mind, after this, it's a dispute between us, no cops can be involved. I can't call the cops on him anymore. What am I going to say? We pulled a gun out on him. We threatened to kill him. We can't even prove that he's been stalking me. Besides, it's my word against this old man, who is rumored to work for the government. I also have a police and mental health record, so I was definitely unreliable and I was going back to the loony bin or back to jail if the cops find out. I was scared shitless. But at the same time, my heart started pumping faster and faster. It was a mixture of adrenaline and fear because I don't want to go back to the loony bin or back to JDAC, Juvie in San Bernardino. We surrounded the car, and Doughboy signaled for the man to roll down his window, with the gun pointed at him. He put the window down. He had a smirk as Doughboy literally put the gun to his neck. He had his phone in one hand, trying to hide it, and Doughboy picked it up. It was an iPhone, set at recording from its lock screen. There was only one video. We looked at the video and it was us, walking out of school, the camera zooming in on me. The video stopped recording when we ran towards the car. Doughboy deleted the video and told the man these exact words, that I'll forever remember. "You old sack of shit, you better stop creeping out my homeboy or I'll blow your fucking brains out." "I'll do it right now," he said, cocking the trigger back. I can see this old man turn pale with fear, but I don't want to ruin your nice car. Now leave before I change my mind. I don't ever want to see you here again. Anywhere near this town. I own these streets, bitch, PIC. Doughboy, 909's finest. We pulled Doughboy off as the man drove off. I never saw him again. It's been a year and a half that this has happened and I never told anyone about this, except for my homies. Damn, I'm excited just talking about this. I still sleep with a gun under my pillow and I have hellish nightmares about the man eating fries with 3 fingers. But I'm glad. First off, I'm glad I'm still alive, because most people don't live through stuff like this, sorry. Second, I'm glad to have some erratic, gangbanging friends, at times. Third, I'm glad I never saw that man after, keeping my fingers crossed. Creepy rich stalker Siberian old man that I met at McDonald's, let's not meet again. For your own safety and mine. Followed at McDonald's. I was living in a low-income housing apartment in Minnesota, and at the time my mom and I simply couldn't afford to have an actual internet provider. This meant I leeched off of people in my building who had an unprotected wireless connection. Whenever their internet connections would go out, I would be forced to walk down to McDonald's in order to use the free Wi-Fi there. This had become a pretty common thing for me. On one of these internet droughts, I was standing about in the lobby of my apartment about to leave when the guy who lived next door to me, an older guy named Joe, stops me before I go. He tells me that him and another of my neighbors were going to McDonald's for coffee, and that he'd buy me one if I went along. I figured why not. I didn't really know much about Joe since I mostly kept to myself. Let me explain Joe. He's hunchbacked with a beer gut, and his ZZ Top-esque beard was full of food crumbs that I can only assume were from a McBiscuit. But he seemed like a nice enough guy, so I went along. After a ride in his rickety truck through the Minnesota winter, I was happy to reach McDonald's. Free Wi-Fi at last. And if Joe held up to his word, a free McCoffee as well. I sit down and fire up the laptop to soak in all that free Wi-Fi. Soon after, Joe comes back with our McCoffees. As soon as he sits down, he starts asking me in a raspy voice, "So boy, ever heard of God's DNA?" I look up from the Windows loading screen and ask, what? I was totally baffled and thinking, great, stuck with another fucking missionary. Damn it. He goes on to inform me that God's DNA is the molecules that hold the universe together, not to mention it's what makes men genetically superior to women. I sure as shit didn't learn that in physics class, so I blew him off, and when I got the chance quietly ducked into another booth to browse the internet in peace. He didn't seem to notice, because afterwards a barrage of freaky beardy lumberjack dudes would come in and out of the McDonald's and talk to him for like 15 minutes at a time. I can only assume they were talking about God's DNA because I did my best to not pay any attention, but Joe and his gang of weirdos still gave me a very creeped out feeling. I could tell that they kept looking over to stare at me when they thought that I wasn't looking. Having had enough weirdness for the night, I decided to duck out when he hobbled off to the bathroom, I assume only to take an epic McShit. I took my chance, folded up the laptop and headed out to brave the cold Minnesota winter on the way back home. I reckoned that having to put up with the elements was still preferable to being around a bunch of weird-looking lumberjack creeps. I was almost back to the apartment when I heard the truck, slowly rolling up and crunching the snow. I looked over my shoulder and I saw Joe in his truck. Next to him was another one of those fucking bearded bums from McDonald's. I waved to them but I got no response. Whatever, I thought. I went home for the night after that creepiness. But then after that, every night after that, every time I went to McDonald's, either Joe or one of his weirdo lumberjack buddies would be there. I could practically feel them leering at me. They always appeared grungy and disheveled. Forced to go to McDonald's just to use the internet, I tried avoiding them as much as possible. It almost seemed as if they knew ahead of time that I was going to be there. Considering they all had a relationship with Joe, I think it is very likely that they actually did. Eventually, someone broke into Joe's apartment and stole his bicycle, prompting him to move elsewhere. I learned a couple things about Joe after he left the apartment, such as that he traded most of his food stamps every month for drugs and that he regularly told women in our apartment that he wanted to leave his body in spirit and ravish them in their sleep, whatever that meant. After this point, I saw the McDonald's stalkers only sparingly, and then never again. Neighbor Joe and other assorted McDonald's stalkers, let's not meet again.